All right, beautiful people. One more video. Let's make it count. The wonderful poet, activist, public figure, Nikki Giovanni, friends with Oprah. But not when she was writing these poems. Oh man, this is some shit, these poems. I will not read the first one on page 318. I've already said the N word enough in these these videos. I won't be saying it that much more. Look, again, as I was saying in the last video, that image that Kafka has of the leopards in the temple. You have this beautiful sacred temple, and these wild animals are breaking in and drinking all the wine in the ceremonial pitcher. And it keeps happening and happening, and then eventually it just becomes part of the ceremony. That's really how you have to imagine, to some extent, the way the Black arts movement has played out. That they're the leopards in the temple who have been incorporated into the ceremony, and people like this militant figure, Nikki Giovanni, who's writing about go out and kill. And she's being playful and ironic, but she's saying it often enough and simply enough that you could be forgiven for mistaking it for something more than irony. And she's young at the time, right? She's mid to late 20s when this book is published. She's born in 43. The book comes out in 71. And she'd shot to fame on these earlier poems around the time of Martin Luther King's assassination, and even earlier. She's really reacting to that, that low intensity Civil War time, but also, as Martin Luther King himself was reacting to, the war in Vietnam and what this was doing, how it was all the promise of the civil rights movement. To realize that promise, the country was going to have to invest in lifting people out of poverty. And they weren't doing that because the money that could have gone to that was going to bomb and destroy Vietnam in the name of freedom and democracy. We were having uncontested elections in South Vietnam and then military juntas, all to bring about democracy. So, again, a very heat of the moment, Sign of the Times book. This comes out in 71. And that it includes these brilliant early militant poems of Giovanni and Reed and Baraka and so many others, but especially her here. You hear her paranoia, you hear her feistiness. Look at one short poem, because it's often anthologized, and it should tell you something. That they of course anthologize the one about home and nostalgia and this wistfulness for growing up in the countryside. They don't anthologize the ones very often these days where she's like, kill Whitey. Page 322. I always liked summer best. This is Knoxville, Tennessee. This is where she was born and where she would return to periodically throughout her life, though her family moved around a bunch as a kid, and she ended up as a young adult in New York City which is where the Black arts movement was headquartered in Harlem. I always liked summer best. You can eat fresh corn from Daddy's garden, and okra and greens and cabbage and lots of barbecue. That's what I'm talking about right there. And buttermilk and homemade ice cream at the church picnic, and listen to gospel music outside at the church homecoming, and to the mountains with your grandmother, and go barefooted and be warm all the time, not only when you go to bed and sleep. Man, to be a kid, chilling with grandma in the summer, no school, doing what you like, does life get any better than that? Unfortunately, in my experience, no. All right, and then let's look at one other poem, then we'll listen to some music by the greatest of all time, the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Let's listen to her. Let's read her poem for Aretha on page 327. Poem for Aretha. Man, that should have been my final exam. Everybody in class has to write a poem about Aretha Franklin. You got to listen to all her albums, and then you got to write a poem. It would have been much better than just listen to me blather on in these videos. Just force you all to listen to the Atlantic years. The Atlantic years. All right. Atlantic Records, when she started out singing jazz, and then Aretha eventually went over into the stuff she's famous for, R&B and soul music, and that was at Atlantic Records. Queen of Soul, man. Poem for Aretha. And again, Aretha's born when she born 42. They're about the same age, and then she died recently, 2018. Barack Obama did not attend her funeral. Shame on him. He went to John McCain's instead. That's everything that's wrong with Barack Obama in one sentence, in one decision. Poem for Aretha, but I think he sent Joe Biden, and the Clintons were there, I believe. Someone was there. Somebody big in the Democrat plutocrat party. Poem for Aretha. And remember about Aretha Franklin? She grows up in the black church. That's how she knows how to sing. Father's a very prominent minister, and she was like a prodigy musician, meaning she was good at a young age, and she was already touring professionally before she was a teenager even. But she also had a child out of wedlock when she was 14. She ended up having like 4 or 5 kids by different men, and she had a very turbulent life. And it was said about her that she always, before a gig, because she had problems when she was young getting paid, even when she got to be, to one of the most famous, recognizable musicians in the country, in the world, she always insisted on being paid in cash before she went on stage. And she would go on stage with her purse. Awesome. You gotta love Aretha. Poem for Aretha. Because nobody deals with Aretha, a mother with 4 children. Having hit the road, they always say, quote, after she comes home. But nobody ever says what it's like to get on a plane for a 3-week tour, the elation of the first couple of audiences, the good feelings of exchange, the running on the ground you get from singing good and loud and long, telling the world what's on your mind. Then comes the 8th show on the 6th day, the beginning to smell like the plane or the bus, that if you forget your toothbrush in one spot you can't brush until the 2nd show, the strangers pulling at you because they love you, but you having no love to give back, the singing the same song night after night, day after day. Then if you read the gossip columns, the rumors that your husband is only after your fame, the wondering if your children will be glad to see you, and maybe the not caring if they are the scheming to get out, just one show and go just one place where some dodo dupa-duke won't say, just sing one song, please. Like, people don't see her as a human being. They see her as a thing that sings. And that it's supposed to sing basically on command, the way it works when you press play on her YouTube or put on one of her records back in the day and so on. Nobody mentions, this is like, think of her as a person too, you guys. And all it's hell being a musician. Most musicians, traditionally, it was not a lucrative job, basically a glorified servant until the recording industry. And there were a few exceptions back in the day, famous opera singers or the virtuoso pianists Franz Liszt or Beethoven and people like that were famous. But that was the exception to the rule. Most of them were glorified servants. And nowadays, even with the breakdown of musicians being compensated for their recordings, to make a living, you go on tour. You're just on tour, which is fun, but it's also like, itinerant. You're never sleeping in the same bed. You're never in the same town for long. It's sort of like, has its downsides. Nobody mentions how it feels to become a freak because you have talent, and how no one gives a damn how you feel, but only cares that Aretha is here like maybe. Maybe that'll stop chickens from frying, eggs from being laid, crackers from hating. Maybe. And if you say you're lonely and tired, how they always just say, oh, come off it, or did you see how they loved you? Did you see, huh? Did you? Which most likely has nothing to do with you anyway. And I'm not certain Aretha shouldn't have talent. And I'm certainly not saying she should quit singing, but as much as I love her, I'd vote yes to her doing 4 concerts a year and staying home or doing whatever she wants and making records, because it's a shame the way we're killing her. We eat up artists like there's going to be a famine at the end of those 3 minutes when there are in fact an abundance of talents just waiting. Let's put some of the giants away for a while and deal with them like they have a life to lead. Stars are damaged by the way we gaze at them. And if you want a perfect example from recent history, think of Amy Winehouse, who just could not cope with the fame that was thrust upon her. She just couldn't handle it for a variety of reasons. Her dad wasn't around. And then when he did intervene, he was to tell her not to go to rehab, as that song documents. But so cruelly, when she desperately needed to go, the fans were begging for her to sing the song where she mocked it. It was a bitter irony that led to her early demise. Aretha doesn't have to relive Billie Holiday's life. Billie Holiday's a jazz singer who had a very difficult life. Heroin addiction, often in poverty, worked as a prostitute. All that came across, that suffering made her voice extremely unique and beautiful. I even played some of her music for you, I think. To relive Diana Washington's death, which I'm not familiar with, but Diana Washington was my grandfather's favorite singer. But who will stop the pattern? She's more important. So she doesn't have to relive all that, and then no, let's not. Let's let her live. Let's keep her alive. Let's not demand so much of her. She's more important than her music. If they must be separated, and they should be separated, when she has to pass out before anyone recognizes she needs a rest, and I say I need Aretha's music. She's undoubtedly the one person who put everyone on notice. She revived Johnny Ace, and remembered little green Aretha sings I Say a Little Prayer, and Dionne doesn't want to hear it anymore. Dionne Warwick, Whitney Houston's aunt. Aretha, also a well-known singer. Aretha sings Money Won't Change You, but James can't sing Respect. The advent of Aretha pulled Ray Charles from Marlborough County and back into the blues, made Nancy Wilson try one more time, forced Dionne to make a choice. She opted for the movies, and Diana Ross had to get an Afro wig. Pushed every black singer into his blackness and Negro entertainers into their Negro-ness. You couldn't jive when she said, you make me feel. The Blazers had to reply, gotta let me be a man. Aretha said, when my show was in the Lost and Found, you came along to claim it. And Joplin said maybe, Janis Joplin, the great white blues singer. There has been no musician whom her very presence hasn't affected. When Humphrey wanted her to campaign for him, she said, woman's only human, and he pressured James Brown. They removed Otis. Otis Redding died in a plane crash. She's being conspiratorial. Because the combination was too strong. The impressions had to say, Lord have mercy, we're moving on up. The black songs started coming from the singers on stage and the dancers in the street. Aretha was the riot, was the leader. If she had said, come, let's do it, they would have done. Temptations say, why don't we think about it, think about it, think about it. That somehow within, there's a long extended essay on basically think of her as a person, this precious, precious, fragile figure that we have to maintain and conserve and treasure and value and not use up and throw out like we do so many commercial items. And why? Why is this? Because the product that she gives us is this level of incredible empowerment, political empowerment, that in the end of the essay, and it's really an essay in verse, it's an argument. At the end she says, compare her to all these other people that we consider kind of popular figures for the movement, that are galvanizing people, that are, bringing white people over to our experience and so on. She's better than all of them. James Brown, Otis Redding, The Temptations, Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick, etc., etc. Like, these are people they deserve the poems in their own right, but somehow Aretha for her is above all of them. Okay? And I don't disagree. So, let's listen. And we'll listen, actually, because I just love it, her version of it so much. We'll listen to that same Nina Simone song, Young, Gifted, and Black. Again, you have to think of this time period as like, there was so much potential that's unrealized from this time period. A lot of these black radicals, the leaders were killed. The movements were crushed by force. Black Panthers destroyed, murdered, imprisoned, exiled by the FBI. And we have to go back to this period to be reminded of how empowering it was to have an afro instead of a weave. And so, this, and I think this song, Young, Gifted, and Black, written by Nina Simone, inspired by the great playwright Lorraine Hansberry, and sung here on the Aretha Franklin album, Young, Gifted, and Black, which is a great album. I highly recommend. It's just an incredible, incredible song. And you'll hear she does something with it that she does something great with it. It's a cover, it's an arrangement, it's an interpretation. And she slows down the beginning. So the whole first, to be young, gifted and black, oh what a lovely precious dream. To be young, gifted and black, open your heart to what I mean. That whole part is not in the steady tempo. It's in this sort of going to church, long, no beat introduction that's just like dramatized to the max, and then after that it breaks into this really just tight funk beat, and it just kills. It absolutely kills. So check this out. I love that we're going out on this. Oh, with the organ. So good. Sing it. You can hear it. Like, she grew up in church. You can hear it. When she passed away, I listened to, or I read an obituary for the New York Times. Very funny. They were saying, before she became a star, it was like white America didn't know people sang like this. They're like, wow, that's really something. And And here we go. Now it breaks into that. So there's been no tempo. It's just been just kind of. Oh, it's so good. So simple, so tight. And then now the verses recur in that funk beat. The phrasing's so beautiful in the melody. I'm adding all these songs to your playlist. And she even cut out the more contemplative, introspective, like melancholy verse. Anyways, so I'll do one more video for you, like I said, on Wednesday, where I'm gonna watch the movie They Live. You should have got an email with a link to They Live. It's also on Blackboard. It's on announcements. If you go into Blackboard, you can click through. You got to make a Dropbox account, but it's free. It's totally free. You can download the movie. It's no problem. And watch the movie once on your own without my commentary, and then, or if you're pressed for time, watch the movie. It's not Shakespeare. You're not missing much of the dialogue. Or just watch the movie with the sound on and listen for my comments, and I'll kind of walk you through this profound movie. It's meditation on what it would take for workers to rise up and fight for their rights against the oppressive ruling class. But it's told in this sort of great 80s science fiction scenario, and it's just one of the best movies of the last, 40, 50 years of America and all our cinema. So be well, be safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on Wednesday.